What continues to fascinate you about the Ambanis? I mean, you could have well done your research on the Birlas or perhaps even the Tata Group that are, as big and as interesting perhaps. But why the Ambanis particularly? I mean, what is it about the two brothers or their late father that grips your attention? Because you do talk about gripping your attention in your book.
Yeah. Well, I think with the father, it was the close connection he forged with the Congress Party and with Indira, and then for a while with Rajiv. And the way in which the fights at the industrial level played off into fights in the ruling party in the 1980s. So that was fascinating, the connection of business and politics. When you have two brothers who are on the Forbes Global Rich List fighting hammer and tongs, you can't get a better story than that.
That's true.
You know, every other business house here has stayed by comparison. And it was an absolutely compelling subject, and I don't think any journalist or business writer could walk away from that one.
When did you think about writing a sequel? When the fight actually broke out, or when the fight actually became so bitter that it landed in court, and then of course there was some kind of a settlement? We're going to talk about those issues. But when did it strike you that you actually wanted to pen down a book on this?
Oh, well, it was a coincidence. I was working in Beijing for my newspaper, and we decided the Christmas of 2004 to have a holiday in a national park here and go and look for tigers.
Right.
We landed here, and suddenly the Indian magazines are full of The Split. Cover stories, page after page, astonishing stuff of starting with Mukesh's reference to family issues and so on, and then the whole dust up, and then the showdown at Maker Chambers happened. We were still in India, and I just started collecting it and following it from there.
First time you wrote a book, Polyester Prince, was really about how Dhirubhai worked, his lifestyle, how he, his rags to riches story kind of a thing. That did not receive such a good response as far as that family was concerned, or even as far as the government was concerned. There was a clampdown of sorts. What has really changed in all these 12 years, in nearly 1.5 decades, that the book that you've come out with now, you're going for a countrywide tour, you're doing a lot of publicity. Is there more openness, or have the Ambanis become less powerful, or is the government perhaps more open to being criticized at certain stages?
Well, I don't think it was ever the government of India that was opposed to the publication. They're quite neutral, and the action that led to the book being blocked in India was legal injunctions by Reliance. So it was court action, not a ban as such or any government disfavour. I think now there's a second generation of the Ambanis in charge of the two different groups now. There's been a lot more water under the bridge, a lot more criticism come out. They've been in a rough and tumble with each other and thrown a lot of accusations back and forward. So a lot of this is probably become sort of routine to them.
It's interesting that your second book, the sequel, you've played rather safe. You're calling it Ambani and Sons. You perhaps could have gone with something more provocative than that? Or is this a conscious decision to downplay?
Well, it was the publisher's decision, Rawley Books. I think the Australian version is called Mahabharata in Polyester. I think the name Ambani has recognition here, which it wouldn't in Australia or in most other foreign countries yet. So it was kind of a nice play on a family business title, and we could have had a bit of fun. I tossed up the idea of slumdog billionaires at one point, and everyone laughed but thought it might not stay a joke for too long.
But I think that's the name you actually end the book with. You do use the phrase towards the last pages of the book, if I remember it right.
Yeah, I did. I couldn't resist using it somewhere, so I threw it in there.
In your book, interestingly enough, you talk about Kokila Ben, the mother, as a very stabilizing factor in the family, as a factor that binds the family together, someone who could perhaps call the shots. The only thing that comes to our mind is if she was all that powerful, and if she had so much of a say with her two adult sons, would the spat have become so bitter?
I think she stepped in later, and I think she was indulgent to both boys, perhaps a little bit more indulgent to Anil, the youngest one. I think the role was forced on her. I don't think perhaps she knew how bad it was going to get and how quickly it spiraled into an open rupture.
That's right.
So she came in, and of course behind her there was the Union government, who were desperately anxious to stop the India story being mucked up by this fight between two of the heroes of that story.
That's right. Do you intend sending them a copy of this one?
No, I don't think so.
You would rather have them buy it and get the royalty.
Well, I hope that too. Nice to get some royalties from India for a change.
And who better than the two Ambani brothers, the slumdog billionaires, I usually call them, to contribute to that. I'm going to come back to the Ambani story. Simply from a business point of view, because you are a journalist and you do track and you have a business interest. Indian markets have skyrocketed. We are talking about levels of 20,000. Very few economies around the world are perhaps seeing this kind of growth. There is a faith in the India growth story. There is a faith in the Indian indices. For some strange reason, in this rally, it's the Ambani pack, it's both Mukesh and Anil, where shareholders have really lost out on. They haven't really contributed to this rally in many ways. What is the reason? Are people beginning to doubt the Ambani story? Are people getting wary of the fight between the two brothers? Are people losing sleep? I mean, what is the reason that these two packs that ideally should have and ideally have in the past really not contributed to this rally?
Look, I can't honestly say. Perhaps because both camps have gone rather quiet in the last 3 or 4 months, and perhaps while they're regrouping after the court judgment, we're not getting enough of a story out of them about where they go from now.